Hello out there in Walter Latham TV land. This is D.L. Hughley with another episode of Notes from the G.E.D section. Two, I think, significant things. I think more so. There are a lot of things that happen. I think more so than anything else is the fining of Penn State by the NCAA. Harsh penalty. They're getting a $60 million fine, which is roughly the equivalent of what the program generates a year. They are getting a 4-year suspension from any bowl participation. They're getting their scholarships cut for 4 years from 25 to 15, and they are also getting all the wins stripped from 1999 to 2011, taking Joe Paterno from the winningest coach in the NCAA to 5th. 111 wins have been stripped from his record. Also, the statue of Joe Paterno was taken down. It's ironic that you would see the statue of Saddam Hussein and the statue of Joe Paterno taken down in roughly the same manner and in roughly the same 10-year period. I think that what has happened to those children that had through no fault of their own, have gone through that program is horrible. I think also that it is a shame that one of the most storied programs in college football history was brought to his knees by a man, Jerry Sandusky, who couldn't stay off his. It's just very unfortunate, but it is the kind of thing, and it was also kind of ironic to hear the NCAA mention athletics and how it was the most important thing. Mention integrity and how it was the most important thing. It's ironic to even hear integrity and college athletics in the same sentence. It seems the height of hypocrisy. And in that vein, speaking of hypocritical, we all as a nation are mourning again what has happened in Aurora, Colorado. 71 people shot, almost a dozen and a half people killed by a lone gunman. And here is the thing. We have to decide what kind of country we're going to be. Either we will be what we espouse to be, or we will be this. We have to accept the fact that whether you come down for guns or against guns, or you believe that gun restrictions are too much or too many, because everybody, too much or too little, that high capacity magazines, which were used in virtually from Gabby Gifford's shooting to Fort Hood, to Virginia Tech, to now this. It seems that we have a problem with people being able to access high-capacity magazines and to shoot people indiscriminately. And we have to decide what kind of country we are. The first thing that some people on the right say, well, if somebody were armed, they would have, been able to deal with this guy who was shooting off in the middle of the movie theater. Let's be realistic. It was dark. It was smoky. People were panicking. And your answer is for more guns to be introduced into that soup of bullshit. I can guarantee you that Colorado, who has some of the most lax laws on guns, and people are allowed to carry them, I guarantee you that at least one person in that theater had a gun. And you know what he did? He ran like everybody else. Even trained policemen didn't run into that building to deal with with this madman. They waited till this cat ran out of bullets. Nobody runs in there and under the threat of a hail of bullets. That's just not what happened. That shit is for the movies. They were at a movie. They weren't trying to make one. And the other thing that I find particularly ironic, whether we limit guns, high-capacity magazines or not, it is our love of violence that gets us in this trouble. 10,000 Americans are murdered every year in this country by guns. 10,000. 500,000 Americans were killed between 1960s and right now by guns. If that were anything, if that were Tylenol, if that were drugs, if that were steroids. When there was a tampering, the Tylenol tampering, roughly 700 people were impacted by that. They took steps to deal with it. When there were people that were getting killed drunk driving, they took steps to deal with that. Even now, texting which is a relatively new phenomenon, they've taken steps to deal with that. That large, even responsible gun owners, of which I am one, believe that there has to be something done about this. But more than anything else, you can place all the laws on the books that you want. Until we change how we philosophically believe or process violence, it is never going to change. We are a violent nation. Isn't it ironic that we get angry at a man who tried to save a life than we do at a man who tried to take one? Case in point, George Bush sent us to war. 100,000, by the most conservative estimates, were 100,000 innocent civilians were killed between Iraq and Afghanistan. 100,000. Not a peep. People aren't really angry. You let him, but Barack Obama tries to make sure that people can go to the doctor. And look at the ire and the animus that has risen from that. We care more about, look at what we spend on education versus what we spend on being a military power. Look at the way that, I had a guy when I tweeted this out, and he tweeted back, well, how is the gun regulation working under President Obama? How do you like that? Well, how did it work under Reagan? As I recall, some madman took a gun and tried to kill the President of the United States. The reason we have the Brady bill is because a man named Brady was shot standing next to Reagan. We, under any president, from Reagan to Bush 1 to Clinton to Bush 2 to now Obama, it says more about us as a people than who's in office. We as a people have got to decide who we are. We fly our flags at half-mast, we have a moment of silence, and then we go right back to being exactly what we were. Just this week, George Zimmerman, the shooter of Trayvon Martin, was on Sean Hannity, and he said he wouldn't change anything about what happened that night, and that it was God's will. If shooting an unarmed teenager, whether he was a perceived threat or not, is God's will, that would not make him God. That would make him an ass. No one, every time somebody wants to do something, they ascribe it to the Almighty as if He tells us to act so animalistic. So we will either change what we are or continue to see. Matter of fact, we should keep the flags at half-mast, because no sooner than it comes down will some other person go somewhere and slaughter innocent people because of what's going on with him. So another note from the GED section: stay safe. Remember my book, I Want You to Shut the Fuck Up, out on Crown Books. It'll be out July 31st. I'm very excited about it. It deals with a lot of things we're talking about in terms of American hypocrisy. I am D.A. Hughley. Again, this is notes from the GED section. See you next week.